Well, welcome to the Get Into stage. Thank you for joining us for our panel discussion here. It's called Beyond Reality, Navigating the Future of Virtual Worlds. And this session will really venture into the epic realm of Metaverse, Web3, AR and VR, where realities collide with creativity. So we're going to be unearthing how these tech wonders can ignite killer careers and reshape industries. So we're going to be looking at some of the untapped possibilities and looking at defying those limits and constructing the future. We've got a great panel for you today, and chairing that panel is Jack Davies, a Senior Strategy Manager at nChain. Now, Jack is responsible for designing scalable protocols for data-intensive applications, utilizing the blockchain and investigating the nature of the Bitcoin network through statistical and quantitative methods. He's currently focused on empirical analysis of blockchain networks and privacy-preserving traceability mechanisms. So lots of interesting things to talk about. There will be an opportunity at the end for questions and answers. So please, while the discussion's going ahead, think about questions that you might have. And similarly, if you're watching online, you can also put the questions onto our online portal. But now, please put your hands together for Jack and our panel.
Thank you very much. Morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. So today we are going to be talking about kind of the full spectrum of emerging technologies that we're talking about. So I'm joined by two excellent panelists, and so we had a last-minute change, and thankfully, just huge thanks to Joe for stepping in here. So we've got Joe Charman, co-founder of Imersifi, and also Meg Gregory, art director at Animated Technologies. So as I said, we're going to be talking about the whole spectrum of all these emerging technologies, things like Web3, augmented reality, virtual reality, Metaverse, all these things you hear about. Because there's a whole family, it's not just artificial intelligence out there, which kind of spans all of them. So we're going to kick things off with maybe just trying to define some of these fields and explain a bit about what these technologies actually mean. So my role is a strategy manager at nChain. So I kind of work on the blockchain Web3 side. I also have a podcast called Untangling Web3. So I'm going to very briefly try and define Web3 for you. So really, Web3 and blockchain are a family of new technologies that have emerged over the last kind of 10 to 12 years for improving the standard of data ownership, digital asset ownership, how we transact. It's really about being able to interact in a more peer-to-peer fashion. So how can we send data and assets to one another? How can we make sure we use the internet in a more privacy-preserving manner, where we don't just give our data up to the big corporations, and instead kind of monetize that on our own terms? So that's my very kind of simple 30-second elevator pitch on Web3. I'm now going to hand over to Joe first, I think, to untangle a little bit of this term virtual reality or VR, as you might have heard. So, Joe, can you just tell us a bit about what this field is and what your role is in it?
Yeah. So I'm Joe Charman from Imersifi, and we make bespoke virtual reality and augmented reality experiences for enterprise. Generally, we focus on kind of engineering through to healthcare, and we kind of place importance on kind of physics interaction design and making sure that when we're making VR apps, they're actually friendly to use. We do a lot of work across the educational sector as well. So we're doing lots of work with the compound semiconductor industry at the moment, alongside Swansea University, Leeds, Warwick, and CS Connected. CS Connected are actually here as well today, over in the corner, and you can try the apps we're making for that project. That's kind of our company in a nutshell.
Yeah, and to you, Meg. So, I know Joe is working in kind of VR, and you're also focused on You're also focused on AR, which is another one of these R technologies. So, what is AR and your role in that field, and how does that differ maybe from VR and virtual reality?
Yeah. So I'll just explain who I am first. So I'm Meg from Animated Technologies. I'm the art director there. So although I'm going to talk a little bit about augmented reality, we are also in the field of virtual reality, and we also create animations too. So with augmented reality, it's where you're augmenting your reality, and it's tends to be more common in mobile applications that you use with your phone to interact with your surroundings. So, for example, we create Trails apps for our local council, which helps to boost tourism in the area and talks about local history. So it allows the user to walk around physical spaces, but interact with things that are in the digital world too. So you're still very much aware of your surroundings, and you're not completely immersed in what's going on like you would be with virtual reality.
So am I right in thinking AR is more like something like your Pokemon Go, where you kind of use the elements of the camera?
Exactly. It's like Pokemon Go. That's the thing that people know the most about augmented reality. But also, so even some of the headsets that people might think are virtual reality are augmented reality, because they have the pass through and you can still see your surroundings.
Yeah. So you can see in these emerging technologies, the first hurdle to get over is kind of some of the terminology, and there's lots of overlap between some of them. And one I want to pick your brains on a little bit as well. So we've talked about Web3. We've talked about two quite specific technologies to do with reality, and obviously the topic today is kind of virtual worlds. So we've talked about augmented reality and then also virtual reality. Often these two terms, I think it's fair to say, get lumped in with another term called Metaverse, right? So I'm interested to get your thoughts. What do people mean when they say Metaverse, and how does it relate to these technologies, AR and VR, and what you guys are doing? So maybe to stay with you, Meg, to pick on that first.
Yeah, so obviously the metaverse is a term attached to Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, and his vision to create this sort of digital world where everything's virtual and people can interact with each other in this virtual space. So I think a lot of times when you're talking about virtual reality and being within the same space as someone, it gets lumped in with the term of the metaverse. It's a difficult subject, because I don't personally agree with having a completely digital platform where people only interact with each other in the virtual world. I don't think there's ever going to be a replacement for genuine human connection and genuine conversation, but it also opens up so many opportunities for people to have access to places that they wouldn't necessarily access. So for us, we're so passionate about language learning and the Welsh language that people can immerse themselves in areas where the Welsh language is prevalent, and they can practice and they can feel safe and they can feel comfortable. But at the end of the day, you've still got to get out there and talk to people.
So I think the main thing about the metaverse is that I think persistence is the main thing. So the difference between virtual reality is you can have something which is multiplayer, but even if it's multiplayer, normally the scene kind of changes as you go back. So you in the healthcare apps we make, we have a virtual patient. When the app gets reloaded again, the virtual patient comes back to the same state for the training to go again. Whereas when the metaverse comes in, that focuses on persistence. So if you leave an oxygen mask on the wall, it would be exactly where it is for the next trainee when they come in. I think that's the vision that, like you said, like Meta and Facebook could kind of push in the future. We're not quite there yet at the moment with it, but no doubt as technology keeps improving, it will get better. It's possible to do persistence in multiplayer at the moment, but you're still limited to what the headsets can render, especially standalone devices. And even then, the Meta sell millions of units, but there's billions of us, so it's still kind of a small, limited experience, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning as well that this idea of this visionary metaverse, this kind of massive multiplayer, Ready Player One type idea, actually goes back as far as the early 90s, I believe. It was in a novel called Snow Crash by, I've forgotten his name now, that's not ideal, but it was in a novel a long time ago. And it's still very much visionary. You've seen with big companies making large plays to move towards realizing that vision, with Facebook obviously rebranding to Meta. But I think the thing that was really interesting for me to hear is that your companies are building on some of the foundational technologies that can make that vision a reality, so AR and VR. But you're focusing on some really practical use cases that are in the here and now, right? You're kind of focusing on where is this technology most applicable to deliver benefit for society in this current decade, not necessarily in 30, 40 years' time. What do you think is the best application of these technologies right now?
So I think one of the main things we focus on is education and training. I think it's got really kind of impactful technology at the moment for that, because you can either do mixed reality or full VR, or like I say, augmented reality, and whichever approach you take, you still can enhance, either full virtual worlds or real worlds with training and put people in situations they couldn't actually be in real life, whether they're too dangerous to do in real life or they cost a lot of money to put someone in. So one of the projects we're working on at the moment with CS Connected in the semiconductor industry is quite expensive to put students into a clean room, because they have to gown up from head to toe. There's no dust particles allowed in the clean room. So it gets really expensive to kind of send loads of students in, and then each piece of machinery is worth millions of pounds. So what we can do is make virtual versions of each piece of machinery. You don't need to actually gown up. You put on a VR headset, you're in the room, and you can kind of do training that way. So I think that's quite impactful at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. The sort of applications that I think are most effective in virtual reality are the ones where somebody is either going to be in danger or they need access to something that they can't access easily. It gives them more opportunity to explore those areas within safety. So obviously there's not the same implications if you set fire to yourself in VR than if you do it in a lab. So, it makes it a lot safer and a lot more accessible. And as I sort of touched on, with the language, a lot of the barriers that people have when they're learning a language is to have the confidence to actually go up and speak to somebody. But when you're in a virtual environment, you can have those conversations without the risk, because you're sort of hidden behind an avatar, or, you're in that safe space and it just feels like a game. So I think that's also an important area of expansion for it too.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. We've had an example of using virtual worlds to learn difficult skills at high risk in flying, right? So flight simulators have been a thing for a long, long time, and it makes perfect sense. It's a high risk skill to learn. You don't want to risk crashing while you're on the learning process. So it's kind of applying that model to many different new use cases, new industries and things.
Well, so at the moment I'm doing my private pilot's license actually at Swansea Airport. And I'm actually using VR and flight sims to obviously go through it before you actually can in real life. It does definitely help, because you get the situational awareness and spatial awareness that obviously you can't do just sat in a chair thinking about it. When you're in VR and you're looking around, you're doing the switches. If you do something wrong, the plane's going to crash. Yes.
Oh, awesome! That's awesome.
Yeah.
So now we know about your hobbies. I want to maybe dig in, because we don't want to talk about the technologies and what they are. We want to talk about what it's like to have a career in these technologies, and how you can get in there yourselves. So can I ask about your personal stories? Like, what was your journey that led you to the world of tech, and were you always planning to be in tech and AR, VR? I mean, I guess when you're in university, it probably wasn't necessarily on the radar, but what is your story, maybe, Meg, if we can start with you?
I've had a completely random pathway to where I am now. I did art when I was at school, and I loved art and I loved graphics, and that was what my passion was. I actually ended up ditching all of that and going to college and training to be a beautician, which I did for 5 years, working in a salon. I felt like an alien within the salon environment. It was very polished. It didn't feel like me. I thought, I need to be creating. That's where my passion lies. That's what I need to do. That's what provides me sanity day to day. So I went back to college to study art. So I did all sorts of stuff: pottery, ceramics, glass, like everything, fine art, life drawing, all of that kind of stuff. And then specialized in graphic design. So graphic design and illustration is what I carry through into my job now. I did go to university to study that, and I think that's given me the ability to have critical thought when analyzing these situations and analyzing these problems that our client has, and giving them a solution for them. The technology that we use within animated technologies blows my mind. The things that the developers make blows my mind. But we all have our specialisms, and we all have that sort of collaborative vision that when we all come together, it works really well. And we're a really small team, but we've all got those little nuggets of information that we share with each other. And that's where I've ended up, really.
So My journey started at Swansea University, so I did my undergraduate degree in business. So I worked a year in industry in finance as a project manager / business analyst. I enjoyed it because the projects were technical, but I didn't feel creative, like you said. It's kind of more organisation. So went back to university. No, I didn't want to do that. Then it got to the end of my undergraduate, and I was thankful to have a graduate offer. But at the same time, I was kind of making this kind of technology with co-founder Jack, and we decided to take the business full time. And we also did the virtual reality masters at Swansea University. The masters came to an end, and we ran the business throughout. And yeah, that's kind of where we are. So that's why we kind of focus on, like across the board, because through the masters we were doing kind of programming, art design, kind of the whole kind of across the board. So yeah, that's kind of led into where we take on all the projects and kind of take on all the hats as well.
I think you can see there's three quite different roles here. So my role being kind of research and also strategy and commercial now. In all tech companies, there's a role for all sorts of different skill sets and different functions, because it's not just about the tech. Actually, it's kind of a common theme in technology companies. I don't know what your experience is like, but I often find that your real techies, your developers are in the weeds, and they find it hardest to communicate sometimes the value proposition or to talk to customers and things. So it doesn't matter necessarily if you haven't got a technical background. There are lots of jobs in technology companies and startups that will be for you. And you were saying the importance of communication, right? Especially from your background. How important is that role and that skill set and that being in different parts of the company for you?
There's completely different personalities within our company, and I think it's fair to say the creativity helps me communicate with different people, and also to communicate with our customers as well. So I think when you're working with things that are super technical, it's really, really easy to over-explain them and get into the nitty-gritty, but Joe Bloggs down the road doesn't know or doesn't care. He just wants to know how it's going to affect him, his family, his life, his local economy, that sort of stuff. And it's explaining it in those terms that, really helps to get that message across. But what I will say is that although I'm a creative, I come, and also our MD as well is in a similar situation, that she comes from a family of engineers. So we've been surrounded by the science, the innovation, the engineering. And it's not that we've not had an interest in it. It's just that our brains are working creatively to try and communicate those things or try and understand those things. And it does all come together. And I think each member of the team, even if they don't get it, they have an appreciation of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it can't be understated enough. There's such a diversity of roles and career paths you can take, and everyone has got a different route in. I work in the blockchain Web3 industry. When I joined, I didn't know anything at all about it. That's maybe another thing, is that you don't necessarily have to be an expert to start on a career path in one of these frontier technologies. They're always adapting, they're always evolving over time. I want to leave some time for questions at the end. So kind of as a closing point between the three of us, I want to get your advice on someone seeking a career in technology and your field specifically. So, Joe, what would you say to someone who's considering, maybe getting their feet into technology?
I would say be open to, so like you said, there's so many different types of roles you can do within technology. You can be purely a programmer, you can be kind of graphic creative, you can tell stories. Every role is really crucial. And as all of the roles come together, that's when you make a really good team that makes cool things. So yeah, I think definitely be open to different roles, give them a go. Don't be afraid to fail at them, because everyone fails and we all try again, and you end up doing something that you love. And I think if you're interested in it, you'll definitely do well and enjoy it the most.
I'm going to have my mum's voice very strongly in my head while I'm saying this, but I think the most important thing is to do something that you enjoy and that you're passionate about, and just try as many different things as possible. Like, I didn't think that when I was throwing a pot that would any way translate into what I'm doing now, but it does. And it's sort of not just thinking so black and white about the things that you're doing, and thinking about the skills that transfer across, the problem solving, the creativity, the technical brain, the science, the maths, it ends up translating. But at the end of the day, if you're working every day and you hate your job, it's sad. It's sad. So I think the most important thing is to do something you enjoy and then find a way in.
Yeah, great advice from both, I think, and maybe my 2 cents on if I was starting again, what advice would I want to give myself would be, don't be scared to take a leap into a slightly different path. I never expected to be in the career that I'm in, and I'm very happy that I did, but it felt like a risk at the time, and a lot of times it can do. The other thing I would say specific to the technology industry is it can seem like a high barrier to entry because of some of the technical know-how, but it's really because they're evolving technologies. Everyone's in the same boat. Like, I'm learning constantly, and I've been doing my research job for 5 years, and you can't keep up with everything that's happening in the blockchain and Web3 space. I'm sure it's similar in your spaces, and also in AI. Everything's going so quickly. No one's really an expert for more than 30 seconds, pretty much, before something else happens and they need to learn again. So don't be daunted and put off by that. I was going to go to questions, but I just thought of something else I wanted to ask you. So outside of what you guys are doing at your respective companies, is there anything in the emerging tech space that you are really interested in or excited about that is outside of the sphere of your kind of work life?
When I'm outside of work or when I'm not working in technology, to be honest with you, my brain needs a break from it. And that's where my interest lies. And I think it's really important when you work behind a desk, when you work in technology, to also enjoy the real world, because sometimes you can get really immersed in it and you can get really glued to the screen that sometimes you forget where your inspiration comes from. And I think that's part of where my thought process goes, is that when I'm out and about and I'm seeing things and I see the shape of something and I think, oh, that could translate into this digitally, or we should include this in that experience, or you have to give yourself a break from it. So I know you're talking about emerging technologies, and I'm just saying, go outside.
It's a good point.
Enjoy the world.
Sometimes you need to break the immersion. Yeah.
But it's important. But I am interested in the VR space, and as a language learner myself, I'm very invested in what we're doing and trying to make it as accessible in a way to new learners, and then to be fun and to allow them to learn properly. And I'll have to give a shout out to Joe, our project manager, who wants to die right now. No, but his knowledge of languages is so important and inspiring to what we're doing within our company, and that's sort of where my interests are lying at the moment, because I'm invested in the learning experience. So I think language technology, AI learning, machine learning, I'm interested in that, and how we can get that working properly for the Welsh language.
I would say likewise, different kind of experiences when you go out and about in your day-to-day life all feed into the work you do. On the emerging technologies front, obviously AI is a big thing that we kind of have to get involved with. There's really cool tools, and it kind of applies to everything. And I think fusing all of them together is going to be the next thing. Blending AI with mixed reality, with hand tracking. I don't know. All of these technologies are going to kind of blend and come together, and we're going to kind of see some new cool things over the next few years, I think. Hopefully emerging from Wales as well.
Yeah. No, you stolen my answer there. I was going to go down the blended route. Maybe the slightly different take, but on the mixture of kind of blockchain technologies and AI. I think blockchain is a really important piece of the puzzle for how do we use AI in an ethical way. How do we make sure there are safe guardrails for using it in terms of the data that's used to train and also the data it spits out. Anyway, thank you so much for your insights, guys. It's been really interesting. And I think at this point, we'd like to open up for any questions anyone has. You can ask us anything about emerging technology or about careers in the industry. So please, if you have any questions, just fire away.
Yep, gentleman over there, there's a microphone coming around to you now.
Hi.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. My name's Michael. I'm an EdTech advocate. I've recently completed an MA in Innovation in Teaching and Learning at the University of South Wales. So my question is for Meg. At the start of the session, she talked about how, how human communication and interactions are vital, and doesn't think that the metaverse should replace our day-to-day interactions. So that really got me thinking, and I've been brainstorming and trying to figure out how can we bridge this gap. What are some possible ways that this metaverse can do more good than harm in this case? So what are some ways that that the industry, or how are people thinking about this? What are some ways to make it more
I think eventually when it scales and it ends up as big as the web, if it's on that sort of scale and it's got that level of accessibility to it, there's going to be some dark corners of it. Just like there's always going to be dark corners of the internet. It's the same thing. But it's about creating the applications where they are safe and they are, regulated. And, for us with working with schools, we need to make sure that that space is only accessible to them. It's not just one big open platform where anyone can join in, anyone can get involved. It's a lot smaller than that. But with the kids in that space, they still feel like they're connected and it still feels like this other world, but it's actually not as wide as them just being thrown into this one big massive arena where all sorts of people are hanging around and lurking. I still think it's important. And as I say, with the access, the virtual world has incredible potential and incredible possibilities. I just think we need to make sure that we're keeping things in balance and we're not going too digital with everything.
Yeah, I think just to briefly add to that, I think the technology that's going to kind of blend the two together is going to be mixed reality. So Meta's new headset released last week is the Quest 3, and that has full color pass through with depth sensing as well. So you can anchor things to the real world. The resolution of the cameras is quite high. So as you walk, you could actually walk around, take a sip of coffee, kind of without hitting your nose in the headset. But you can actually walk around and you can put things will end up in doorways, opening portals in windows, things like that. But you can still interact and talk to other people around you. So I think that kind of blended technology is going to then hopefully bridge virtual and this kind of metaverse vision together into something which is accessible to everyone, alongside, like you say, all of the ethical things.
Yeah, and just a tiny comment on the end of that. I mean, I think in terms of making a big, expansive, open metaverse safe to use, I think you will need to have some kind of gated community or gated area access control based regions within there, right? So you can't just walk into a room where something's going on that a child shouldn't be taught, conversation that a child shouldn't be having or something, but an adult is happy to have. And I think that's where, again, a lot of the technologies that are underpinning Web3, proof systems, digital certificates, signatures can all be used to prove access, prove that you're over 18, for example, without giving away your age, that kind of privacy preserving technique, to then control access to certain regions in the metaverse. I think again, it's going to be a blend of all these technologies that are going to solve the real vision, I think.
Lots to think about there. I think we've got a question on our website that's come through online. So, no, that's not. Oh, sorry. I thought you were saying there was a question at the back. Oh, sorry. My fault. Excuse me for that. Do we have any more questions in the room? No? Well, thank you so much for that. I think there was such a lot to think about and unpack there. I think it was really nice to sort of explain all the different facets, how they all work together, and what might be sort of things to think about going forward. These guys will be here now for a couple of minutes, so if anyone does have a question they want to ask them as they come off the stage, that would be great. We also have another session happening here on the stage at 11:15. It's called Opportunities for the Next Generation in Protecting the Digital World. So if you'd like to join us for that, it would be great to see you. For now, though, please put your hands together to say diolch and thank you to Jack, Joe and Meg.